All right. Good afternoon. Good evening almost. Welcome. Welcome to our spring semester Flannery Lecture in Catholic Theology. My name is John Shevland. I'm a professor here in the Religious Studies Department. And it's my pleasure to say a few words about our guest, our speaker tonight, and the lecture series itself. This last weekend, our speaker traveled from Manila, Philippines, to be with us for a brief time. She leaves tomorrow morning. And this gives us a sense of the importance of place and space, both hers and our own. And so a renewed appreciation for the Spokane tribal land on which Gonzaga University resides, and also the Spokane tribal people and all of the original inhabitants of this region we acknowledge tonight. We acknowledge those who now remain and those who belong to a deep historical past spanning millennia. Thank you for taking valuable time this afternoon to join our guest, Dr. Agnes Brazal of LaSalle University in Manila. She is the first of two speakers for us this spring who are helping us to experience and think deeply about our yearly theme, which is global Christianity. On Tuesday, April 4th, 2 weeks from tomorrow, Tuesday, April 4th, Jesuit father and theologian Marcel Uwaniza of Rwanda will speak with us about what can be learned from the genocide in Rwanda. And if I can shamelessly plug, we have flyers on the chairs. Not every chair, but there are flyers with those things that I'm told are called QR codes, that I'm told with those things called smartphones, you can do that. So that's how we sign up. That's how we register to potentially participate in that next Flannery lecture just in 2 weeks' time. But tonight, Dr. Brazal will make special reference to the Catholic Church's process of synodality, which has been enjoined by Pope Francis. And she's going to reference what the church might learn about and implement from a Taiwanese online organization. The Flannery Lecture is made possible by the Flannery Endowment, which was established in 1973 by Spokane's own Maud and Milo Flannery to promote the study of Catholic theology at Gonzaga. Tonight, we dip into that support 50 years later, grateful for the many ways the Flannery family has contributed to our university's life and intellectual work over 50 years. We have, as we always do, a member of the Flannery family with us tonight. Michael Flannery, Michael, and his husband, Dean Lynch, attend these events unfailingly, and it's always a pleasure to see them and to share our space with them. Thank you to Michael and Dean for your support of Gonzaga and our work. Thanks for your friendship. And thanks also for the gift of your great aunt and great uncle, without whom we would not be here this evening quite in the same way that we are. So as we gather this evening, we are conscious of deep rifts and divisions in the Catholic Church, which are painful and multifaceted, complicated, in need of not only further study and attention, but in need of what we'll learn about tonight, the synodal process itself. A synodal church is a community whose members come to respect each other's dignity, recognizing in each other not merely difference or disagreements, but rather a diversity of talents, gifts, and charisms, so that we understand ourselves to be a communion. A synodal church is a church whose members listen deeply to each other, consult each other, and create spaces for practices of rich inclusion, all premised on the fact that we have something to learn from each other, that we indeed stand in need of each other. Synodality places us in a spiritual stance of consultation, listening, dialogue, reciprocity, to effect inclusive patterns of journeying together, not merely as a temporary moment, but a permanent way of being a community. If synodality can help us to address our divisions and to learn unexpectedly, then the study of global Christianity or world Christianity can help us to decenter ourselves and bring those on the peripheries into the center. It is actually more accurate to acknowledge that in a world Christianity framework, the metaphors themselves of center and periphery do not quite work. They reveal our bias, whereas the study of world Christianity helps us to appreciate that we live in a world of many cultural centers, and that our own center is but one. Dr. Agnes M. Brazal received her PhD in theology from the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium and has taught for many years at LaSalle University in Manila. She's a highly regarded theologian on multiple continents, as a prolific author, and as an author with impressive breadth of scope. She's a past president of the Catholic Theological Society of the Philippines, DaKa Teo. She serves as the Asian regional coordinator of a project called Doing Theology from the Existential Peripheries. And that project is organized by the Vatican's dicastery or office for the promotion of integral human development. This is the office from which the leader of it, Cardinal Czerny, spoke to us during midterm week 2 weeks ago on the Pope's efforts to care for our common home and to teach about that. So she's connected. She's a board member of numerous publications, including Booty Journal, Damarum Publications, the Academy of Asian Christian Studies, and Brill's Global Catholicism book series. Her own recent writing includes a book published in 2019 called A Theology of Southeast Asia, and a journal article which appeared earlier this month called Synodality and the New Media, upon which some of her comments tonight will be based. And she's also co-edited numerous volumes like Theology and Power, Intercultural Church, which she co-edited with her spouse, Emmanuel de Guzman, Church in a Global Age of Migration, Feminist Cyber Ethics in Asia, Transformative Theological Ethics, and Faith on the Move, a Theology of Migration in Asia. Impressive writings, impressive scope. We are delighted to have Dr. Brazal with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, Dr. John, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon. I am honored to be with you here today for this Flannery lecture on global Christianities. Special thanks to the Flannery family represented here by Michael Flannery and Dean Lynch for the endowed gift that made this lecture possible. Thank you as well to the Religious Studies Department of Gonzaga University, especially Dr. John Shevland, for inviting me to deliver this lecture and for your generous hospitality. This is not my first time at Gonzaga University. I was also here for the first annual Sister Mary Garvin SJNM lecture in 2014. My topic today is on synodality and the new media. As you may have heard, it was working earlier. Well, yes, we have to. No, it's not working. Okay, yes. So as you may have heard or not heard, the church is undergoing a synodal process that began in October 2021 and will last until October 2024. Now, during the Second Vatican Council, Pope Paul VI instituted the Synod of Bishops, which is a gathering of group of bishops from different parts of the world at fixed time to give advice to the Pope on matters related to the Church. Now, for the 50th anniversary of the institution of the Synod of Bishops, instead of simply gathering the bishops for the Synod in Rome, Pope Francis committed himself and the Church to a journey towards synodality. So here, Synodality is no longer just an event, but as Cardinal Mario Grech, Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops notes, a process. It is a process of consultation in which the whole church is involved, especially those on the periphery who are often excluded and forgotten, and even those who have left the church. Now, this thrust toward maximum participation and inclusion will necessarily give rise to divergences and conflicts regarding theological issues. So in my presentation, I will explore how the use of new media following the vTaiwan model can be a means to go beyond an impasse and discern the consensus fidelium. vTaiwan is an online-offline discussion platform established by the government and activists in Taiwan to promote participatory governance. My presentation is divided into 5 sections. The first section deals with the importance of inclusive participation in the Catholic tradition. In the second section, we elaborate on Pope Francis' expansion of the meaning of synodality from the Synod of Bishops to the Synodal Church. The third section examines synodality and the question of census and consensus fidelium. The fourth section deals with the vTaiwan approach to democratic participation. Now, why the choice of the vTaiwan model? vTaiwan, according to Crowd Law, managed by the Governance Lab at New York University, is the most institutionalized among the dozens of participatory governance projects worldwide. Tom Atlee, developer of the Wise Democracy pattern language, observes, and I quote, "There is nothing else quite like it in the world. And although it arose out of Taiwan's unique political history and conditions, it has many features, principles, patterns, and lessons that can inspire democratic evolutionaries everywhere," unquote. The last section will deal with the possibilities of appropriating features of the vTaiwan model in synodal processes. Inclusive participation in the Catholic social tradition. The Church has increasingly stressed the importance of participation of marginalized groups in decision-making and governance in various areas. Pope Benedict XV argued for the inclusion of the native clergy, who can understand better his people, and thus may be able to effectively introduce the faith to them. Pope Pius XI countered racist allegations about the intellectual inferiority of the native priest. And Pope Pius XII extends the rights of various ethnic or racial groups to be headed by a bishop from one of their own. As a social norm, participation in decision-making had been endorsed in Quadragesimo Annum, particularly in the worker sharing in the management or ownership of a company. Gaudium et Spes encouraged the participation of the largest number of people possible at every level in economic development and in juridico-political structures. In light of the greater need for justice among nations, Octogesimo Adveniens advocates greater share in responsibility and decision-making for developing nations. Along the same context, the Synod of Bishops 1971 affirms responsible nationalism that spurs people to organize politically toward their full development. For the theologian Christine Goodorf, the clearest statement on the need of humans to be self-determined is stated in Laborem Exercens, and I quote, "As the image of God, he is a person, that is to say, a subjective being, capable of acting in a planned and rational way, capable of deciding about himself and with a tendency to self-realization," unquote. The importance of participative decision-making in society and within the Church has been further stressed in more recent teachings. Caritas in Veritate links participation to the principle of subsidiarity, involving even the grassroots level. Centesimus Annus underlines that the Church values the democratic system inasmuch as it ensures the participation of citizens in making political choices. Evangelii Gaudium teaches that participation in political life is a moral obligation. In his call for societies that are open to everyone, Pope Francis admonishes the Church to specially ensure the active participation in civil and ecclesial community of hidden exiles, such as persons with disabilities and the elderly. He calls for a more incisive female presence in the church and endorses a model of social, political, economic participation that embraces the popular movements on the local, national, and international levels in their distinctive ways of acting. Now, this turn towards synodality, spearheaded by the Pope, will play a significant role in realizing this broader participation. From the Synod of Bishops to a synodal church. Theologian Massimo Fajoli noted how Pope Francis has inaugurated a revival of synodality in the Catholic Church, not only by making it a recurring theme in his papal teachings, but also by making the synod more participatory. The Synod of Bishops of 2014 to 15 on the family and marriage, the Synod in 2018 on the youth, and the Synod of 2019 for the Amazon region were much more participatory in nature compared to previous ones in terms of the formation of the agenda and openness to debate. In synods of the past two popes, there were topics that were even off limits for discussion. In Episcopalis Communio, that is Pope Francis' Apostolic Constitution on the Synod of Bishops, he made mandatory the extensive consultation of the faithful that he introduced in the preparation for the synods that we have mentioned. It identifies three major phases in the process. First, the pre-synod assemblies at the international, regional, and local levels, where the people of God can be consulted on the theme of the synod. Second, the Synod of Bishops itself, which is the celebratory phase. And third, the implementation phase, where the synod's conclusion, as approved by the Pope, is received by the churches. By integrating the pre-synod assemblies within the synod process itself, the synod has become an expression, not just of the doctrine on collegiality of bishops, but of the church as people of God. The process not only starts, but also ends with the people of God in the implementation phase. The Pope, since the beginning of his pontificate, has stressed the centrality of the people of God and how the hierarchy must be in its service in the fulfillment of its mission. Furthermore, Episcopalis Communio explicitly stated that non-bishops or religious who can have voting rights and non-voting guests, for example, fraternal delegates from other churches not in communion with the Catholic Church, special guests, or those with acknowledged authority on the theme, may be invited to the Synod of Bishops, and the Pope determines their role in each case. So this formalizes a process that has been adopted in previous synods in Francis' pontificate, but which has been questioned by some quarters. As you can see in this poster, on the synod and the family, among those who would attend are non-voting collaborators and married peoples and auditors appointed by the Pope. It is likewise possible for institutions of higher education that are specially competent in relation to the synod theme upon invitation by the competent authorities or through their own initiative to submit their views to the General Secretariat of the Synod. The Catholic University of America is among the non-diocesan Catholic groups that submitted its report to the US bishops. Episcopali Communio provides a space as well for various groups to directly submit to the General Secretariat their contribution. So this allows groups to ensure that their concerns gain greater visibility and are elaborated on more fully. So some of the reports that were submitted directly to the Vatican was the International Survey of Catholic Women and the report of the New Ways Ministry. The International Survey of Catholic Women involved 17,200 respondents from 140 countries, the largest survey ever of Catholic women in the Church's 2,000 year of history. The New Ways Ministry, on the other hand, is a Catholic group that advocates for gender equity, inclusion, and justice for LGBTQ+ persons. Lastly, the Pope, as president of the Synod of Bishops, can permit a Synod's assembly document to be published as official teaching, as prescribed in Episcopalis Communio. This was implemented for the very first time in the history of the Synod of Bishops, when the Pope indicated that Querida Amazonia, his post-synodal exhortation, did not overrule or replace the final document of the Synod of Bishops. Because normally, only the Synod only has an advisory role for the Pope, and the final document offers a number of proposals that the Pope is free to accept and implement or reject. In the past, such as in the case of the Synod of Asia, the final document of the Pope, which was Ecclesia in Asia, did not reflect fully the sentiments of the episcopal conferences. In the case of the Pan-Amazon Synod, Pope Francis did not cite from the final report of the Synod, referring instead, and I quote, to officially present the final document and to encourage everyone to read it in full, unquote. So remember that in the context of the need for more indigenous priests, the final document of the Pan-Amazon Synod suggests the ordination of married men of virtues in the region. So that Querida Amazonia did not replace the final document can be interpreted as a tribute to the Synod Fathers in line with Francis' trust towards a synodal church. And it can also mean that the discussion on married priests has not yet been closed. Pope Francis' style of governing is likewise characterized by the primacy he gives to listening. The Pope has expressed how synodality can enlighten or guide the exercise of papal primacy. Fagioli described the formation of the Council of Cardinal Advisors by Pope Francis, which met 30 times until June 2019, as a supra-curial body of consultation with the Pope and a different way of using papal primacy. Furthermore, the Pope's relationship with episcopal conferences can also be described as more synodal. For example, in cases of impasse on certain issues, he brings the decision back to the National Conference to resolve. So this was the case with the Italian Episcopal Conference, where the issue was the selection of the president, and Pope Francis was in favor of election, but majority of the bishops don't want election, so he gave back the decision to them. Lastly, his openness to listen and discuss issues such as the ordination of women to the diaconate is remarkable when compared to the stance of his predecessors. Synodality and consensus fidelium. Underlying the synod consultation is the importance given to the sensus fidei, sensus fidelium, and consensus fidelium. Sensus fidei refers to the instinctive capacity of the virtuous believer to discern the truth of faith, inasmuch as each one has been gifted with the Holy Spirit in baptism. Through the sensus fidei and the gift of the Spirit, the believer is able to sense and anticipate how Christian practice can develop most appropriately in new historical and cultural contexts. Sensus fidelium, on the other hand, is the sensus ecclesiae. It refers to the church's instinct of faith, the supernatural appreciation of faith on the part of the whole people, when from the bishops to the last of the faithful, they manifest a universal consent in matters of faith and morals. Sensus fidelium is rich in the interrelation between the faithful, the theologians, and the magisterium in the communion of the church. By promoting the concept of sensus fidei and sensus fidelium, the Pope has strengthened the role of the lay faithful in the development of doctrines. At some historical juncture, the sensus fidelium can lead to a consensus fidelium, such that a particular belief of the people becomes part of Christian doctrine with the explicit consent of the faithful. Arriving at such a consensus should be the fruit of discernment through the Holy Spirit's guidance. And discernment is a key factor in Pope Francis' concept of a synodal church. Consensus fidelium is an instinctive scale of discernment through which the believers grasp what is erroneous through the acceptance or non-acceptance. As Cardinal John Henry Newman, a seminal proponent of sensus fidelium, writes, and I quote, "Submit your heretical and Catholic principle to the action of the multitude, and you will be able to pronounce at once whether it is imbued with Catholic truth or worth heretical falsehood," unquote. One can compare it to the method of winnowing, where the grain is separated from the husk with the help of the wind. However, in the process that the Pope has laid out toward maximum inclusion and participation, even of the excluded and those who have left the church, issues would necessarily be raised. And we see this already reflected in the document for the continental stage titled "Enlarge the Space of Your Tent," where issues about LGBTQ, the ordination of women, married priesthood, the divorced, and the remarried have been raised. It is interesting to note that the International Theological Commission in the 2014 document Sensus Fidei in the Life of the Church has recognized the value of dissent within the church as inspired by the individual sensus fidei. Alerted by their sensus fidei, individual believers may deny assent even to the teaching of legitimate pastors if they do not recognize in the teaching the voice of Christ, the Good Shepherd. The sheep follow the Good Shepherd because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run away from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. The view about dissent here is very different from the 1990 document, The Ecclesial Vocation of the Theologian, by the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith under Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, which states, and I quote, "To succumb to the temptation of dissent is to allow the leaven of infidelity to the Holy Spirit to start to work," unquote. Now, while this is a welcome development, theologian Charles Curran holds a pessimistic view of both the German synodal way and the Vatican Synod on synodality, saying that the failure to arrive at an agreement will only lead to frustration and disillusionment, which will in turn lead some to leave the church. The German synodal path commenced in December 2019, preceding the Vatican Synod. Its supreme body is the Synodal Assembly, composed of bishops and an equal number of lay Catholics and representatives of religious orders. Among its resolutions are church blessings for same-sex couples and allowing women to preach. So in my presentation, we shall explore the potential of new media in overcoming polarizing divisions within the church. New media and synodality. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Vademecum, which is the official handbook for the Synod on synodality, has recognized how online meetings or hybrid synodal sessions can be an effective alternative to in-person meetings. New media, however, need not just be an alternative option, but can foster forums integral for ensuring that the synodal process reaches maximum and diverse participation, as well as arrives at the consensus fidelium. One promising model is that of the vTaiwan that employs new media to promote participatory governance within the framework of wise democracy. The wise democracy paradigm is a collaborative, holistic, qualitative approach that veers away from majoritarian votes and instead tries to address opposing views to arrive at a more adequate response to an issue. Wise democracy integrates three dimensions of democracy: power, or the ability to implement decision, participation, and collective wisdom. And it foregrounds the generation of collective wisdom. It engages the participation of a broad diversity of citizens, including the mainstream, to generate this collective wisdom and overcome partisan divide, as well as foster trust in authorities. It has worked at a large scale on the national level in Austria and Germany. vTaiwan, a historical background. Taiwan may be an unlikely model for democratic governance. It held its first direct presidential election only in 1996, almost 10 years after martial law was lifted in 1987. However, it has developed a strong civil society based on community associations that historically look for common solutions through joint action. And this collaboration has in the past decade been facilitated by the development of cyber communication. As Taiwan is a very small island, 245 miles long and 90 miles at its widest point, it was not difficult to deploy internet connectivity, such that 87% of the 23 million residents over 12 years old are now wired. Now, in 2012, some politically concerned computer programmers who referred to themselves as civic hackers established a system of auditing Taiwan's central government budget by its citizens, giving birth to Gov or Gov0. No, they are not anti-establishment tech-savvy anarchists. The Gov0 movement is composed of activists, coders, designers, scholars, and ordinary citizens who employ tech innovation to allow people to have access to information that can help them reshape policies. Gov0 was a key organizer of the 2014 Sunflower Movement, when in March 2014, hundreds of young activists physically occupied Taiwan's national legislature for around 3 weeks in protest of a pending free trade agreement with China, criticized as a step towards Taiwan's unification with China. This civic consciousness and commitment to nonviolence garnered large-scale support and eventually led to a change in government in early 2016. Called the Sunflower Movement, it generated new political parties and collaborations between traditional political parties and activists, thereby continuing to reshape Taiwanese politics. So vTaiwan is among the legacies of the Sunflower Movement. vTaiwan, a crowdsourcing model. In the context of a decreased trust in government and its institutions, Gov0, at the invitation of the Taiwanese Minister for Digital Affairs, created vTaiwan, an online-offline discussion forum that seeks to foster civic deliberation process for shaping legislation. Through its transparency, it hopes to revitalize trust in government and belief in its legitimacy. So vTaiwan started in 2015 in the midst of debates about legalizing the sale of alcohol online. To address the impasse created by the fact that the various stakeholders, alcohol sellers, e-commerce platforms, and social groups, worried that this would make liquor more accessible to children, were talking past each other. Some government officials and activists took the discussion to a new online platform that they referred to as vTaiwan. So the deadline was resolved within a few weeks with the following recommendations. 1, only selected e-commerce platforms and distributors can sell alcohol online. 2, purchases can only be done by the use of credit card. And 3, only convenience stores can serve as collection points for the purchases, thus rendering it impossible for children to access the liquor. So these were incorporated into a draft bill that was sent to the parliament. Now, what made vTaiwan successful in bridging an impasse? One of its key parts is Polis, an online platform where anybody with an account can post the topic for debate. It is different from other online forums in that one cannot reply to the comments, thus preventing mutual trolling. Platforms like FB are engineered to keep you on site, and this means serving up content that provokes the strongest emotions, either in favor or against the comment. In Polis, a user can only upvote, downvote, or pass a comment. There are no echo chambers. Instead, this is replaced by an attitudinal map, showing where you are in relation to everyone else. The upvotes and downvotes are mapped visually to cluster those who have voted similarly and generate the points of division and consensus from hundreds or thousands of comments. This is done employing real-time machine learning or artificial intelligence. This visualization of the groups in real time and how they are voting vis-a-vis comments incentivizes participants to formulate statements that are more nuanced, likely to drive consensus. Taiwan's research reveals that oftentimes users, after disagreeing with a statement, submit their own statement that addresses their concern and appeals to both parties, generating more upvotes, thus reducing the gaps. So they will see in real time the gaps being reduced. People compete to bring the most nuanced statement that can win most people across. Polis thus gamifies consensus, and in the process reveals hidden points of agreement. Therefore, even as there is no direct interaction among the users, Polis fosters discernment and deliberation among the users such that they are mutually shaped by each other's standpoints. The vTaiwan platform allows the opposing sides to interact and realize what they have in common. More concretely, the vTaiwan process has 4 successive stages: proposal, opinion, reflection, and legislation, propelled by open source engagement tools. Open source tools are publicly accessible and can be modified or customized as needed. So in this diagram, the proposal stage is represented by the white box, the opinion stage by the light gray box, the reflection stage by the dark gray box, and the legislation stage by the darker gray box. In the proposal stage, any individual or group can submit an issue that he or she feels the need to address. A rolling survey is often conducted asking people about their experience and knowledge of the issue and soliciting recommendations for other possible respondents to the survey. The survey rolls, for example, through Facebook groups, as people recommend others who are involved or affected by the issue. Through the responses, the issue is identified and clarified. Then, volunteer vTaiwan activists determine the stakeholders in the issue. That is, anyone who will be affected by the issue or has the power to shape or shift a decision on the issue. At the opinion stage, volunteer vTaiwan activists create educational materials based on the information gathered that are accessible to the stakeholders and will later be used as a point of reference in successive deliberations. The materials often include a dictionary of the terms related to the issue so that this can be easily understood by ordinary people. This process is propelled by a self-initiated volunteer workforce and crowdsourcing approaches similar to those that support Wikipedia. Polis is then employed to gather opinions of large groups of participants. Any registered user can post a statement that others can take positions on. The rough consensus starts to emerge at this stage through the Polis algorithms. The organizers then publicly publish and send to concerned government agencies raw and analyzed versions of the forum interactions. These reports foreground statements around which there is consensus, as well as statements that are polarizing. These shape the direction of the discussion in the reflection stage, where consensus can further crystallize. Before proceeding to the next stage, the vTaiwan volunteers conduct 2 in-person meetings to decide whether to spend a month more in the opinion stage or to proceed to the reflection stage. In the reflection stage, the volunteers facilitate an online-offline dialogue among stakeholders, which is live-streamed. The success of the dialogue depends on the inclusion of diverse representation. The facilitator relays inputs from the online discussion to the in-person forum. And with the employment of digital note-taking, the discussion is summarized in real time and projected on the screen. If an issue involves hundreds or thousands of stakeholders, the Polis software is employed. Polis has a suggestion box function where users can submit tweet-sized statements, reflecting their stance on the issue. As noted earlier, the other users can agree, disagree, or pass on these statements. The clusters of statements can be discussed further in face-to-face dialogues that involve selected stakeholders such as relevant government ministries and representatives from the public of the diverse opinions that emerge in Polis. The legislation stage involves the formalization of the rough consensus that emerge. The rough consensus is turned by the organizers into either a policy for a government agency or a bill for the parliament. And this puts pressure on government to make a decision on whether to accept the results or provide an explanation as to why it is rejecting the suggestion. So by August 2018, vTaiwan had already been employed in 26 cases, with 80% resulting in a decisive response from the government. The vTaiwan's major weakness, however, is that the government is not obliged to take action on the result of the discussions. They can simply ignore it, thus effectively reducing the vTaiwan process to what Jason Chu, former activist and now legislator, referred to as a tiger without teeth. If the results do not lead to legislation, the process may be seen as open washing, that is simply a front to make it appear that there is transparency in government. Another limitation of vTaiwan is that the online process tends to favor technology-related issues like Uber, regulation, telemedicine, provisions on revenge porn, etc., thus limiting its impact. And lastly, the online process also tends to leave behind the less digitally literate sectors of the population, such as the elderly or people in rural areas. Join vTaiwan within the government. Another forum for hosting and debating online petitions is Join, a new participatory governance system that has been developed in Taiwan and that, like vTaiwan, employs polis to generate consensus. It adopts a process similar to vTaiwan, but instead of Gov volunteers, it relies on senior career public servants who are at the core of the platform. So like vTaiwan, the consensus gained by Join is not legally binding. However, any participating government agency is required, should a petition receive more than 5,000 signatures, to respond point by point as to why it agrees with or rejects the proposal. So for such petitions, bi-monthly face-to-face meetings are held across ministries to examine how this can be integrated into policymaking. So Join is more appealing to the older and less tech-savvy population, and it does not just deal with issues related to the digital economy. But one of the concerns raised about the process is the continued resistance from government bureaucracy. So some participants feel that senior public servants have viewed them as mere protesters or mobs instead of citizens with distinct expertise. Discerning the consensus fidelium in a pluralistic society. The vTaiwan process can provide a general model for the church in the cyber age to help it foster greater participation and thus become more truly synodal in its deliberations. The International Theological Commission document Synodality underlines the need to establish mechanisms for consulting the entire people of God, citing the Roman law principle used in the medieval church, quote, "What affects everyone should be discussed and approved by all," unquote. Episcopalis Communis has also allowed for the identification of other means of consulting the faithful. Digital synods have already been conducted, not only to reach out to those who have left the church, as in the Diocese of Brooklyn, but also to serve as the main platform for the synodal consultation itself, as in the digital synod initiated by the Dicastery for Communication that reached 20 million people and received 110,000 responses. Through such digital synods, it is now possible for the faithful to express their views directly and participate on issues affecting the church. New media, together with in-person assemblies, can ensure greater accessibility and inclusion, identified by the Vademecum as important in the unfolding of the synodal process at the local level. Polis, in particular, can contribute to finding consensus on fractious issues. In gamifying consensus, polis functions as a sort of grace or virtuous structure that encourages participants to foster consensus instead of polarization. So what is a grace or a virtuous structure? So these are structures that enable or foster choosing or doing the good. Furthermore, Polis adopts a model of consensus that does not simply harmonizes by glossing over differences, or simply by working within the church framework, where what can be discussed, how it can be discussed, and who can be involved in the discussion are predetermined. For example, in the past, you could not even discuss ordination of women openly. The consensus-seeking process here provides a space for dissent to renegotiate what is visible, sayable, and meaningful in the church. Now, the Vatican on various occasions has issued warnings against treating the synodal process in parliamentarian ways. The document Synodality cautioned against interpreting the consultation with the faithful in terms of a parliamentarianism on a political level. Pope Francis has also underlined that the Synod of Bishops should be an occasion for prayerful discernment and not of parliamentary lobbying. The synodal process is not a mere majority consensus like a parliament. Likewise, among the pitfalls in the synodal process that the Vademecum has identified is reducing the synod process to something akin to a win-lose political battle. On issues about women, the church has oftentimes argued that the church is not a democracy, but neither is the church a monarchy or a theocracy. US American historian Scott Appleby says it is closer to a hierocracy that is ruled or government by a holy caste. At the same time, however, Pope Francis spoke of the Amazonian Synod as, quote, a rich and necessary parliament, unquote, though it did not reach the point of discernment. It got stuck in the parliamentary battle, particularly on the issue of ordaining married men in the Amazon region. The Pope himself has encouraged conversation on controversial issues, but the question is, how can this be done in a way that engages the greatest number of the faithful and the inclusion of a diversity of voices without falling into polarized disagreements? So the vTaiwan approach can assist us here as it adopts a process that is not majoritarian, but instead promotes participatory governance. The appropriation or adaptation of some of the features, principles, patterns, and lessons of the vTaiwan model in offline, online synodal processes can help avoid the threat posed by the virus of polarization. So first feature of the vTaiwan model that we can appropriate is non-anonymity. Participants in the online discussion are registered with their real names. Knowing the background and social indicators of the user is important in ensuring authenticity and accountability. A second major feature is the use of polis, which facilitates a kind of communal discernment process. The vTaiwan model does not operate from a competitive, majoritarian, quantitative democracy that produces winners and losers, but within a collaborative, holistic, qualitative democracy that generates wisdom. So in this paradigm called wise democracy, defeating an opponent rather than topping and integrating their piece of the truth is a tragic waste. vTaiwan moves beyond the win-lose model through the polis algorithm. It veers away from focus on numbers and highlights more on where diversity and consensus exist, and even one opinion with high wisdom value can make a considerable impact. Now, this aligns with the spirit of the Vademecum that opens a space for dissenting or minority positions to have an impact in the synodal project. Views should not be excluded simply because they were expressed by a small minority of participants. Indeed, sometimes the perspective of what we would call the minority report can be a prophetic witness to what God wants to say to the church. The Vademecum also stressed important dialogical virtues in the synodal process that are likewise fostered in vTaiwan model. humility in listening, the principle of fairness, and accurate synthesis. Humility in listening involves asking, how is God speaking to us through the voices we sometimes ignore? These voices can include, among others, those of the laity, women, young people, religious, and clergy. What facilitates or inhibits our listening? Now, this humility in listening must correspond to courage in speaking. What enables or hinders speaking up courageously, candidly, and responsibly in our local church and in society? The principle of fairness ensures that the voice of each one is equally heard. And this is reinforced in the stress on accurate synthesis that presents the range of responses, including minority views that open new horizons. Theologian Jos Moons, S.J., notes the newness of the virtues required in a synodal process. Humility in listening, but also paresya, or the courage in speaking, even in the face of opposition. For him, these virtues reconfigure ecclesial culture that traditionally puts emphasis on obedience. A third major feature of the vTaiwan model is transparency. It promotes open source and open space. All activities and products must be fully and publicly available to all parties. Similarly, the Vademecum underlines the importance of transparency. It prescribes the need for clear communication of the processes of invitation, involvement, inclusion, and aggregation of input. A fourth major feature is responsiveness. People in official positions are part of the process, and they are required to give a response to the issues raised by a significant number of users. So example, if it's a consensus stance, or as enjoined, if the petition receives at least 5,000 signatories. While nothing parallel is stated in the Vademecum, responsiveness is in line with the principle of accountability. The principle of accountability requires decision makers and deliberators to attend to the claims of all those who will be impacted by their decisions, including future generations. The vTaiwan model has limitations that need to be addressed, if ever appropriated, within the synodal process. First, there is the need to be mindful of how to include those who are not wired, either through hybrid or high flex, that is simultaneous online, offline conversations, and or providing them means, for example, provide mobile data to access the internet. So like in the Philippines, this was done to allow basic ecclesial communities, grassroots leaders to meet online with other parish leaders. Secondly, there is a need to integrate moments of prayer to listen and learn from each other and discern the spirit of truth in the hybrid high-flex sessions and in the different stages of the process: proposal, opinion, reflection, resolution stage. Lastly, as noted earlier, a weakness of both vTaiwan and Join is that there is no responsibility on the part of government to heed the consensus emerging from the discussions. The same liability would confront the church if some version of vTaiwan is appropriated in the synodal process. The document on synodality by the International Theological Commission cautions us, though, not to underrate the largely consultative nature of the synodal process. Similarly, the Vademecum states, and I quote, "The path of synodality seeks to make pastoral decisions that reflect the will of God as closely as possible, grounding them in the living voice of the people of God," unquote. However, while the process aspires for maximum inclusion, the church's decision-making bodies are not representative. Women are largely excluded from these bodies, except for the Assistant Undersecretary to the Synod, Sister Natalie Beckart, who has a voting right. So she's the only woman with a voting right in the Synod. So in this regard, the German recommendation that a synodal council function both as a consultative and deliberative body on important developments in the church and society on a supra-diocesan level is a way forward. This council comprises both bishops and lay people with a gender and generation appropriate composition. Conclusion. The Catholic social tradition has increasingly emphasized the importance of participation of formerly excluded groups in decision-making, both in the church and the bigger society. While Paul VI established the Synod of Bishops in 1965 as a permanent council of bishops to advise and provide information to the Pope, Francis broadened it to be a means through which the broadest consultation possible can be made, with a diverse representation of voices, especially among those on the peripheries, even to the point of including those who have left the church. The risk of creating an impasse in the synodal process due to polarizing disagreement is high. In this article, we have proposed the appropriation of the following features of the vTaiwan model as a consultative, holistic, qualitative approach toward discerning consensus fidelium: non-anonymity, the use of polis, and transparency. We have shown how these are aligned with the vision of the synodal process as expressed in the Vademecum. But the main question, however, is the extent to which this process can succeed when the decision-making body, the Synod of Bishops, is not as representative as the Synod assemblies. Thank you.
With all that furious typing and note-taking, maybe we should appropriately have a few minutes for conversation. If there are questions or comments for our speaker, it sounds like there could be assignments happening.
Do you have an exam?
I wasn't sure.
After this?
She's here in the room, and she'd be happy to take your questions. Michael Flannery.
Thanks very much for your speech. If you're looking at the program you've created that have been created in Taiwan, you're looking at a relatively homogeneous population, perhaps, and you hope to gin that up to do all of the Catholics or Christians in the world. Is there anything that people have tried to figure how that might work? Because you're dealing with such diverse groups of people.
Well, actually, the vTaiwan model was created in order to accommodate the diversity of opinions. No, I don't think the Taiwanese are homogeneous, no, in their position to different policies. So it's actually to be able to hear from these diverse people and their opinions, and then find the consensus. Yes.
Just following up on that, have people talked about how you could scale this up from 20 million to 1 billion? And
well,
can the algorithm handle?
Polis is well, it's meant to deal with big data. But of course, you need a lot of people as well, volunteers, no, that would go from the parish to the diocesan level up to the Vatican level. Yeah. Well, it's a dream. Yes. But we are in the cyber age. I mean, we have this technology, and then, yeah, we want to consult all the people. We say that, but to what extent have we done that? We cannot, of course, consult everybody, but we should aspire for the maximum inclusion.
How would this program, assuming that this model ends up being used, how would it overcome the language barrier? Because that's a lot of different languages throughout the world.
You have a point there. Now, of course, on the local level, there would be similarity in languages, no? But going broader, you will have these multiple languages. So you need translators, no? Well, the Google Translate is becoming better and better. But yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you so much. That really sparked my imagination. I was wondering about the consensus fidelium. I don't have much of a background in Catholic theology. I was wondering, on the slide it said at certain historical moments this might happen. And as a historian, I'm wondering if there are historical moments that were like sort of indexed there. Are there moments of
Usually it pertains to devotions, no, like the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. Yes. Or even the, well, the Arian controversy. Yes, and yeah, the affirmation of the divinity of Jesus. Actually, that was in a way endorsed more by the laity, no, rather than the bishops.
Other questions?
So when social media began to explode in the United States, there was a great deal of hopeful expectation that it would move in the direction of more democratic participation for persons, but it seems to have moved in different directions than that. Do you believe that are there market forces that would impede this process in social media? And then I'd like to tag on a second question, if I might, and that is, what is it you think in the structure of Roman Catholicism itself that would impede the willingness of leadership to embrace the political ideals behind vTaiwan and polis?
Yes, certainly with us as well, we thought of social media as something that could foster democratic participation. But in our case, like the election of Duterte, he's a populist leader. It was brought about by disinformation, no, about the past president, no? And now we have elected the son of the dictator. So again, they spend a lot of money, no, for social media, no, to spread disinformation about the martial law regime. But certainly there are market forces behind this, no, because Facebook earns a lot, no. Of course, governments are trying to regulate it. No, like Germany, they would have some penalties. No, if you post disinformation, but still, I think it's not being adequately addressed. But I mentioned polis as a virtuous structure. Well, it's not from a business group. No, it's from social activists. No, it actually started in Seattle during the time of the Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street. So as long as it's not it does not become a business, then it will be a neutral space, no? But it's also a virtuous structure because it doesn't foster polarization. Instead, it encourages, no, the finding of consensus.
One of the enjoyable things about hosting a guest from so far away is we get to provide wonderful meals. That will be happening shortly. But any final comments or questions for Dr. Brazal before we conclude the evening?
Maraming salamat. I have a question in terms of, I know the election of Bongbong Marcos was influenced by the media, and a lot of his, the expectations, and a lot of young people voted for him because they don't remember the Laban movement in the 80s. I was just wondering, has social media affected the views of the church and the relationship to government in the Philippines due to it?
Yeah, I think so, because even the clergy is divided, no? Of course, it has been divided even during the the martial law regime. No, there's a book that's entitled "The Splintered Stuff," no? Because there are clergy who are in favor of the Marcoses, and there are those who were resisting, no, the dictatorship. Yeah, with social media, we were not able to, yes, really conscientize the public, including the clergy. So some clergy still supported Marcoses, or they were not vocal enough, no, this time, unlike in 1986 People Power Revolution. And also there's suspicion that the SD cards, because elections have been computerized, the SD cards have been manipulated. So it's a highly technological thing, because during the 1986 People Power Revolution, you know, we were there. Volunteers were really protecting the ballot boxes. So you can concretely protect something, but now with the computerized election, you don't know what's happening afterwards. No, so the results, 50% of the results came out about 2 hours after the election. So it was, you know, in a country where the internet is very slow, we had a very fast election results coming out.
As I make the long walk, I wonder if I might impose a question as well, and that would be to do with, you know, the pattern that we seem to talk about synodality as almost as a practice for the laity. The laity are kind of clawing their way toward having a voice. From the other side of it, though, what would you speculate or hope would be the benefit of synodality for priests, bishops, cardinals, the curia, whomever in the ordained portions of the church? What do they stand to benefit from in particular, in your view?
Well, for the Pope, at least is able to hear now what the people are saying, because as I have mentioned, you can submit, even if you are an individual, no, or any group can submit directly to the secretariat, no, what you feel about a certain issue. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, there are some groups that did that, no, submit directly. So the same is true with bishops and priests who want to listen to what the laity are thinking. But even among the clergy, there would be, I suppose, divergence of opinions on theological issues. So their voice would also be heard in this synodal process. No? We do it correctly.
Thank you for your talk, ma'am. I know we live in a time where we have multiple meanings to a particular word. What a certain word means to someone in location A could be read differently in another location. Through your talk, I also read the paper. We have terminologies, synodality, peripheries, margins, coming to the core, coming to the center. And then I hear inclusion also. I hear you talk about the natives, like those in the Amazon, will be, or they are already, I need clarification, are they already getting ordained?
No.
Those who are married, or is in process? And then when we talk about inclusion and periphery, and then you show a picture of Sister Natalie Banque,
yes.
Right. She's the only one that has the voting right.
Mm-hmm.
How does that help me understand the term inclusion? Is that a new concept? Is that a new meaning?
It's a process that that we want. No, we need structural changes, no, for real inclusion to happen. And well, the Pope was interviewed in relation to the women, no, that will be participating in the synod, no? Because it's only Sister Natalie who has a voting right. But his response was, all the members will be able to vote. So I'm hoping that that would include now women religious, because the brothers, the LaSalle brothers who were there in the past synod, they were able to vote, but the women religious were not. No, I think the Pope is doing small steps to change the structure slowly. So at least for us, we've been waiting for for quite a time for reform in the church. That's good news. At least now we can speak out. No, we can say what we think about certain issues, and then hopefully the structural changes will come. The Latin American Synod, they already established an ecclesial assembly similar to the synodal assembly of the German Synod. No? So that's a structural change that is also important, because in these assemblies, so they are the highest decision-making body. There's an equal number of bishops and the laity. And the Pope did not object, according to Professor Rafael Luciani, to the Latin American structure. So maybe he's changing his mind, because initially he was saying, yeah, we're not into structural changes, but slowly things are changing.
Well, thank you so much for your time, not just tonight, but for all the time that you took to get here over the weekend, and the time it'll take to get back and then recover from getting here. Truly grateful, Dr. Brazal, for your visit. As we retire to the rest of our evening, please do consider either taking one of these flyers with you, or, because we are connected, using your smartphone and whatever it's called, the QR code, scanning that, and consider attending our next Flannery event, which is in 2 weeks' time. And it is a webinar only. So we don't get to be quite together, sort of together, but it'll be over Zoom. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Dr. Brazal.